Kirtan. Respond. Thank you, Maharaj, for something. There's a different kirtan singer every time we have a class. We need more classes. Okay, this microphone stand's got a problem. Well, Pran Govinda isn't with us today. Huh?
I don't think he'll come during the daytime.
Okay. Well, since he was really charged up about hearing about pragya, a little sharing with all of you on the topic of pragya. Remember the meaning. One who is sufficiently intelligent was one of the definitions given by Prabhupada. So when I got back after yesterday evening's class, I got some text messages from a devotee that some of you know. The devotee is Parama Karuna Das, disciple of Gopal Krishna Maharaj, who's completely focused in book distribution. One might say a fanatic. He has a van, and he has somebody that survives because he moves like from, anyway, he has an intense personality. And so he just sent me a text message, this image that's on the screen, and he told me the story that he was in Western Washington University, which I've never heard of before, by the ocean in Washington, to the state of Washington, Bellington, Washington. And the text said he and his one driver, friend, devotee, they were crying because no one came. He said literally crying. And then this fellow in this picture came up and started reciting Bhagavad Gita 2.54, 2.55. He recited the Sanskrit, and then he recited the English. You know, teaching them, reminding them, you know, one who is sufficiently intelligent doesn't lament like you guys are lamenting. Interesting fellow. And then, you know, that was the cue that he needed. So he referred to a verse from 7 Bhagavatam, the same verse, 7.6.5, opened up the book, showed the fellow, and the fellow bought the Srimad Bhagavatam set. Coincidence, right? Super Soul wasn't involved in that one at all. And so I sent another text message. Ask him, now that he has because he was going to install the Bhagavatam set in his home at 8:30, but they decided not to go to his home, to go by the sea, because they're very near the sea, and they installed it on a boat by the sea. That's where this fellow lives. So they did the Bhagavatam installation on the sea, and then they read that verse in the purport, you know, referring to the first verse, and then the fifth verse, where Prabhupada amplifies the pragya text. And here's what he sent after the evening was over and Parama Karuna went back to his van and did whatever he does at night. This fellow sent two text messages. This is one. It's nice. While strength remains and the breath still moves freely, one must not delay in seeking what truly matters. To know right from wrong is a gift. That was the definition of pragya. But to live by that, knowing is grace. Let us not wait for the body to weaken before we remember the spirit is eternal. while the lamp still burns, let it be turned toward the highest. That was his realization from reading that purport. And it turns out the fellow has a Christian background. So he then sent another text that's from a Christian text, the Course of Miracles, that has an acronym, ACIM. I'd never heard of it before, but this is what his text, it's directly from text 20 from ACIM. Let me not wander from the way of peace, for I am lost on other roads than this. But let me follow him who leads me home, and peace is certain as the love of God. Nice. It's nice. I mean, this fellow was on a journey, different kind of journey, but similar journey. He knew the Sanskrit and the English translation of 254, 55 Bhagavad Gita, and applied it to, they looked sad. They weren't pragya. Okay, two other sharings. One of the phrases in 6.1, so 7.6.1, how rare, how special it is to get the human form of life. So that's what Prahlad's teaching is to his friends. Here's what Krishna's teaching is to Uddhava from Uddhava Gita, Canto 11, Chapter 9. And we'll say the verse together because it's an often cited verse, and we'll read the translation. Labdhava sadulabham idam bahu sambhavante Madushyam artadam anityam apiha diraha turnam yet yeta sapatet anumritya savat nikshayasaya vishaya kalo sarvata syat. After many, many births and deaths, one achieves the rare human form of life, which, although temporary, affords one the opportunity to attain the highest perfection. There's the highest perfection phrase again. As we go forward in time, keep your antenna up and catch how many times Prabhupada uses the phrase highest perfection, or perfection of life, or perfection of... He's asking us to target our lives towards that goal. Thus, a sober man, a sober human being, should quickly endeavor for the ultimate perfection of life, as long as his body, which is always subject to death, has not fallen down and died. After all, sense gratification is available even in the most abominable species of life, whereas Krishna consciousness is possible only for a human being. Same message. Same message. The language is different. Same message. And there's another same message found where Narada Muni is instructing Vyasadeva, Canto 1, Chapter 5. This is an easier one to recite together. Tasyai vaheto prayateta kovido lalabhyate yad brahmatam uparayadha talabhyate dukavad anyata sukham kalena sarvatra kabira ramhasa. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, It can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries, even though we do not desire them. These verses are the subject matter that our founder Acharya would repeat and repeat and repeat, and sometimes make reference to this and sometimes make reference to that, but it's repeated again and again by our founder Acharya because it's fundamental, foundational message in the Bhagavatam, and Prahlada is the speaker of one of those. So we're attempting to connect with some very vital messages, and the audience is little demon boys, but that's okay. He doesn't hold back any punches. He lets them have it. So we discussed verses 6, 7, and 8, and now we're moving on. But we're going to touch on 6, 7, and 8 one more time. 6, 7, and 8 is those 100 years and how they're divided. And then 9, fate of an attached householder. If you don't pay attention to his advice, the consequences are the fate of the attached householder cannot liberate oneself, tightly bound by the strong ropes of affection for wife, children, relatives, and that's it. And that's it. And that's it. Guaranteed, minimal guaranteed another birth. So the real problems of life aren't addressed. So that they can't really take care of themselves. Since his mind was always affected by Krishna consciousness, that's the good kind of affected, Prahlada marveled at how the world goes on being fully absorbed in the activities of sense gratification. Now little boy, but he saw, and he's advising his classmates. So here's the 6, 7, and 8 verses summarized. 100 years of human life are wasted, commonly. 50 years of sleep. Anyway, 20 years in childhood and sporting, 20 years in old age and invalidity. These are 10 years of doing something useful. And then the next 2 verses, 9 and 10, within that 100 years, increasing attachment to family life with strong ropes of affection to spouse, children, etc. Now, the advocacy is not be detached from family members. That's it's undue attachment to the extent that it's no longer appropriate or human. It's excessive, and it blocks spiritual life. The attached householder becomes like a silkworm, which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out. It's a nice comparison. So now we're going to take a look at 9 and 10, because we already yesterday discussed 6, 7, and 8. So here's 9 and 10. What person too attached to household life, due to being unable to control his senses, can liberate himself? An attached householder is bound very strongly by ropes of affection for his family. No, too much. And text 10, money is so dear that one conceives of money as being sweeter than honey. We've heard that one before. Therefore, who can give up the desire to accumulate money, especially in household life? Thieves, professional servants, like soldiers, and merchants try to acquire money, even by risking their very dear lives. So that's a thief at the bottom, by the way. and others and others and others. They risk everything to get that one thing. They're not prepared to risk whatever it takes to get the spiritual perfection. They're prepared to risk to get the money because it buys sense gratification in their estimation. Now, here's another image amplifying the same point from these two verses. The core of one's heart, this is Prabhupada's purport, the core of one's heart is immersed in how to accumulate money, even at the cost of one's dear life. One does not hesitate in cheating others. Now, it's not devotees understand this, otherwise we wouldn't be devotees, we'd be doing something else. But it's the warning is there's a lure, and one can get lost in that realm of life. Too much. Essential, fine. And too much, not fine. So now we're going on to those nice 3 verses, 11, 12, and 13. I'm going to read them. Hopefully the page is marked. There we go. Translation, 11, 12, 13. It's long. How can a person who is most affectionate to his family, the core of his heart being always filled with their pictures, give up their association? Specifically, a wife is always very kind and sympathetic, and always pleases her husband in a solitary place. Who could give up the association of such a dear and affectionate wife? Small children talk in broken language, very pleasing to hear. And their affectionate father always thinks of their sweet words. How could he give up their association? One's elderly parents and one's sons and daughters are also very dear. A daughter is especially dear to her father, and while living at her husband's house, she is always in his mind. Who could give up that association? Aside from this, in household affairs, there are many decorated items of household furniture, and there are also animals and servants. We walked over here, there's this couple, they had 3 dogs, and one dog was as big as they were. I don't know what brand of dog it is, but he was like a horse. Guy was really big. Who could give up such comforts? The attached house, so then the silkworm. The attached householder is like a silkworm, which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out, simply for the satisfaction of 2 important senses, the genitals and the tongue. One is bound by material conditions. How can one escape? Now, these are transcendental teachings, and it's the detachment, the same teaching that Krishna was giving to Uddhava. I mean, not that Uddhava was attached, or not that these little kids, school maids of Vermont, are meditating on becoming attached in family life, but in course of time it happens. So, Komara Acharet Pragyo, Dharman Bhagavatani Hat. One should learn these principles even at an early stage. There's the silkworm. The attached householder is like a silkworm which weaves a cocoon in which it becomes imprisoned, unable to get out. I can't recall if it was Prabhupada that described, but how those persons that deal in silk get the silk. They keep, like is pictured here, they keep silk worms, and the silkworms go out and they make their cocoon. And then poor silkworm, they just take the silkworm and put the whole shebang, cut the thing that's hanging in these branches, and just drop it in a vat of boiling water, and the silkworm dies. And then it leaves the silk, but the silkworm is dead. You don't mind sacrificing the silkworm because they want the silk. They get the silk, and silkworm dies. Simply for the satisfaction of two important senses, these same two. One is bound by material conditions. So it's a metaphor. However, a little appreciation, and I'll expand on it a little bit. There are situations where Srila Prabhupada would say that if one is studious, one can learn about life from scenes in nature. And then he would give examples and give examples and give examples. And some of you may recall, I don't remember, we may not have been here, but a seminar on Light of the Bhagavad. Did you hear that one? Light of the Bhagavad. Oh, Light of the Bhagavad is a book that was written by Srila Prabhupada when he had not yet taken sannyas. He was living in Vrindavan, and he was writing his Back to Godhead magazine, and he had begun translating Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1. And one of the things that he did is he would go back and forth to Delhi for two reasons. One reason was to circulate his Back to Godhead magazine and preach, because that was the life given by Bhaktisiddhanta to his followers. So and Bhaktisiddhanta, in addition to books, had magazines in Bengali and in English. So Prabhupada had one in English. It was a different name than what Bhaktisiddhanta gave, but he was following in his footsteps and Back to Godhead way, way, way back, in the late 1950s, early 1950s. So one fine time when visiting Delhi, a person who he had made acquaintance with gave him a flyer that he had a friend had received a flyer from Japan. It's a little background. In Japan, during that period of time, just prior to that period of time, there were no visas being allowed because persons were still in a panic space. International exchange was like, we don't want people in our country because who knows what might result. But it just started. Shortly thereafter is when Prabhupada got his visa to America, because before that was no visas. Then visas were starting. So this fellow in Japan had an idea. Now they're giving visas. So he conceived of an event. See if I can remember the title of it. Anybody remember the title of it? The Congress for the Cultivation of the Human Spirit, which could mean anything. Congress for the Cultivation of the Human. So it's like beyond the borders of our country is humanity, and so reach out to humanity and let's have a Congress. So the venue was Tokyo, because the man was Japanese. And Prabhupada took the flyer, wrote a letter to the organizer, and requested the organizer to send him an invitation so he could get a visa, because without, it's one of the requirements for a tourist visa. So the gentleman sent back a letter that entitled Prabhupada to get a visa, at least quality. He didn't get a visa, He didn't get a passport. He didn't have any money for either. What to speak of a ticket. But while living in Vrindavan, he wrote a book. And he gave a title to the book. It was for the purpose of this. It's common thing that people do that are intellectuals. When you're giving a public talk, you write a paper. And you publish the paper that's the companion for your talk. So he was invited to be a speaker. So he had a speech, but along was a book, Light of the Bhagavad. Light of the Bhagavad, just because he wanted to propagate Srimad Bhagavatam. Light of the Bhagavad. That celebrated verse from the first canto, after the departure of Krishna. The darkness of the age of Kali begins, but one in this age of Kali can get light from the Bhagavad. So that was the title of the book. And then Prabhupada considered to the audience, this is described later, the audience was primarily, at least the venue was in Far East, so he considered people in the Far East, they have a tendency, a liking, to understand truths of life from scenes of nature, which is true. It's part of the culture. They understand other things, but they understand philosophical and culturally attuned people understand truths. So he selected Canto 10, Chapter 20, because it's a description of scenes of nature. After the summer season in Vrindavan comes the rainy season, and then after the rainy season, the spring season. So it's just scenes, the whole chapter is scenes of nature. What's it like during those two seasons? And so he took the verses and then made chapters from the verses describing truths of life, like Light of the Bhagavad from scenes of nature. And it was, brilliantly conceived, fantastically composed, and never got published during his lifetime because he didn't have the money to publish it. He didn't have the money to go and speak it either. But it sat in a trunk, the manuscript, along with the flyer and the whole thing. And then sometime later, the devotees had access to those trunks, and they found a number of wonderful things. One of the things they found was the manuscript. Now, what to do with the manuscript that never got published? So because it was for the Far East, they gave it to the man that always knows how to get stuff done, Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And at that time, he was in Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, had the artwork produced to match the Prabhupada's description. Prabhupada sent details, chapter by chapter, to the organizer of this event, that he wanted the organizer of the event to create pictures. This is part of Prabhupada's strategy. So that paintings in their traditional art style that could be blown up and put all around the place so people could see the message, Light of the Bhagavad message. And then, the picture speaks 1,000 words, right? And so Prabhupada gave descriptions of what the artwork should look like. The gentleman didn't make the artwork, but Tamal Krishna Maharaj had the descriptions along with the manuscript. So he enlisted, there's a whole story of how he found like a super duper artist, celebrated person. They liked the concept so much, they charged minimally and made fantastic artwork. Light of the Bhagavad, in traditional style. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, what? Okay. Tamal Krishna Maharaj it was Mission Impossible Man. So the artist made the artwork. The manuscript was translated into Chinese, and in Hong Kong, he had Light of the Bhagavad published first in Chinese. And then because the manuscript was in English, then other BBTs that were English speaking, they published the book also. And many used the same artwork. And then, so it's an available piece of literature, one of the first that Srila Prabhupada wrote long, long ago. So scenes of nature. So this is an example, that silkworm is an example from the Bhagavatam of a scene of nature. Now, there's teachings in Bhagavad Gita and then amplified here in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there is appropriate. Well, let's do this. At the end, the final 5 chapters of Canto 7. So Canto 7, a major part of Canto 7 is the story of Lord Nrsimhadev bursting from a pillar and dealing with Hiranyakashipu, and et cetera, and Prahlada offering prayers to him. And before that, Hiranyakashipu torturing his son, and he's not a nice father. He needed a parenting class, I guess. So a major, we discussed this the other day, that Prahlad says in chapter 10 of Canto 7, he says to Lord Nrsimhadev, you sent me to this world to teach the ways of pure devotion. So after this pure devotion principle, there's what about how supposing one isn't there yet, how do you get there? Oh, so it's a discussion, Varnashram, 5 chapters. And in Varnashram, they're all bhakti. The Varnashramites are not just materialists, but they have a devotional perspective, but they're not there yet. They're not at the pure devotion standard. So here Prahlada is teaching the pure devotion standard and indicating the undue attachment. No, so in the final chapters, there's a natural affinity. Everyone that gets a material body gets one because there's affinity for having one. So, going back to the very beginning of the whole canto, the personality of Godhead is not partial. And some like this, some like that, some like the other thing. And the Supreme Lord is very kind. He sees this, that, and the other thing, and he reciprocates accordingly. So everyone, without exception, that takes birth in the material world has an affinity. So now, how to manage that affinity, how to address it? One can go in excess. That's what Prahlada is speaking about in the manner of pure devotional service. Then, supposing one is not excessive, but what about necessities? Take care of necessities. Just this morning, and one of the things I like to do every day, is I listen to Srila Prabhupada giving a recorded lecture, and it sounded like he was in the UK, and he was speaking to very new people, and he was speaking to very new people in such a way, on this very point, necessity's fine, but not excessive. So where's the line between what's necessity and what's beyond necessity? It was his topic for new people. And then the association that one keeps, how much do you eat, how much do you sleep, how much you associate with worldly people, because we're in the world with worldly people. So what do you do? And his explanation was the association is as necessary. You have duties in life, and so you perform those duties in life with worldly people as is necessary. But the confidential dealings, the intimate, close personal dealings, are best directed to those that have a spiritual inclination. So associate with spiritually minded persons, or sadhu sangha, or same simple message of one of the steps in bhakti life. And then, but I'm not a pure devotee yet. That's okay. Then you have affinity and you engage accordingly. He went on. He went on and on about our Mahajans, the 12 greatest authorities, 7 of them were householders. Then he went on, Lord Chaitanya and his associates were householders. Even Lord Chaitanya himself was married before he took sannyas, and the others didn't take sannyas. And they were married, and they had children, and so on. So it was like elevating the consideration of being in the world, but not unduly attached to the temporary. So here Prahlada is going to kind of above that, or in extreme manner, speaking, the attached, unduly attached, it's like the silkworm. And it's true. It's true. What does the silkworm do? They make this nice nest, a cocoon. And once they're in the cocoon, they're finished. They do some nice work. They make some silk. And somebody comes along and says, thanks a lot, Mr. Silkworm. See you later. Finished. Like it or not. So there's consequences for being unduly attached. There's necessities, and do the necessities. That's the point of practice as the final chapters of this 7th canto. And it's nice to read, just like we're reading this part, because we're reading this part because it's in anticipation of the Nrsimha Chaturdasi. By the way, this is a side note, and I'll come back to the main topic. The side note is, many of you received, some of you may have not received, if you don't find out how you can receive, this nice document that gives a description of Prahlada Maharaj in his previous birth before he was Prahlada Maharaj. Anyone, if you didn't receive it, find out how you can receive it. So what the description is after Hiranyakashipu is dealt with by Lord Nrsimhadev, and Prahlad is pacifying him with nice prayers, then Prahlad asks Lord Nrsimhadev, how did I become your devotee? It's a good question. And the answer given is from Hari Bhakti Vilas, quoting a Brihan Nrsimha Purana. Lord Nrsimhadev says to Prahlad, "Oh Prahlad, my dear boy, in your previous life you were a Brahmana, but you didn't study books, and you didn't act like a Brahmana, although you're born in a Brahmin family. In fact, you did just the opposite. You befriended a prostitute and you hung out with a prostitute. And you did things that a young fellow and the prostitute do together, and you did a lot of that. And then something happened. You got in a quarrel with the prostitute one day on the Nrsimha Chaturdasi. And because there was a quarrel, you fasted, she fasted all night long. And as a result of unknowingly engaging in Nrsimha Chaturdasi Vrata, coming up very soon, next week, because you observed Nrsinga Chaturdasi Vrata, she became an Apsara, and then at the end of her life, she went back to Godhead. An Apsara life. And then you became Prahlad. And at the end of your life, you're going back to Godhead. So, someone asked the question, this wasn't in class, it was out of class. Wait a minute. Here's the doubt. Wait a minute. How did he observe Nrsinga Chaturdasi Vrata even before Lord Nrsingadev appeared? Because Nrsinga Chaturdasi commemorates the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev. So he's observing Nrsinga Chaturdasi before Nrsingadev appeared. Could you please explain? You understand the question, right? Do you understand the question? I'll just speak to you, and you three boys, and see if you don't get it, say so. If you get it, give me one of these. Okay. Prahlad, in his previous life, was a fallen Brahmin. Like Brahmin by name only, but he was like a fallen guy. And he and a prostitute had a quarrel on the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev, although he hadn't appeared yet. Because it's his next life that he appears. Before he appeared, he observed Nrsinga Chaturdasi. That's the contradiction. So the question someone was doubting, how is it possible? How is it possible he observed Nrsinga Chaturdasi before Nrsinga appeared? Sounds contradictory, doesn't it? That's the contradiction. Yes, no, or maybe. You three. The three musketeers. Okay. So here's that. This reference is from, many of you got it. If you didn't get it, find out how to get it, and you can read the reference. It's a translation. It's not this like pristine translation, but it's a translation of Hari Bhakti Vilas referring to Brihan Nrsinga Purana. So the answer is found later in that series of verses from Hari Bhakti Vilas, where it says that the author, Sanatana Goswami, cites a verse, doesn't say Brihad Naradiya, Brihad Nrsinga Purana, but Nrsinga Chaturdasi is an eternal event. It's an event, it's the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev in this world, and therefore it's a chronological event in a certain phase of the moon. So how do you have an eternal event where there's no moon? There's potency within that event, and he appears on Nrsinga Chaturdasi. And so, you got the answer? The answer is the event is eternal. Even before Lord Nrsingadev appeared, there was such a potency in that event. And he observed it unknowingly. And he got a lot of benefit. So did the prostitute, the lady, according to that scriptural reference. So, and all of this, the context of this message in Hari Bhakti Vilas is explaining how important it is. And you can anticipate Nrsinga's appearance day is coming up, and it's a nice idea to do something in honor of Lord Nrsingadev's appearance, because there's like this long description of all these powers or potencies or benefits that come from someone that observes Lord Nrsingadev's appearance in a special way. One of them is fasting, but it's not like if you don't fast and you're in a penalty box. You know, you get benefit by doing anything. Anything. So think about it. You know, everyone can do something. Sing a song of Lord Nrsingadev. You know, many things one can do. Make an offering specifically, consciously, purposely for Lord Nrsingadev, and make some offering, have a picture or a deity or something. Because it's auspicious. I mean, there's many auspicious days, but it's especially glorified in the Hari Bhakti Vilas. There's a whole full section just about him, Lord Nrsingadev's appearance, and the power of observing his appearance. So back to this nice topic of maintain necessities, but in excess, it's like the silkworm. One becomes captive by that excess, and when that excess is there, one becomes complacent in the spiritual purpose. This is another part of the verses that we read. One fails to understand the purpose of human life. And you understand the purpose of human life. You know, someone gives you $1 million. You can use it wisely. You can use it foolishly. You use it foolishly. You can do things that are very detrimental to yourself and to others. Even with the idea that it's beneficial, it can be very detrimental. You know, something very powerful in the hands of a fool is very dangerous. So one has to be qualified. But if one isn't qualified by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and Prahlad's caution to his young classmates, then this valuable human, the $1 million gift, can be squandered. And before you know it, it's all gone. And then what? You don't know what's next. You don't know. You can have an idea, but you don't know. Although one always suffers from the threefold miseries, one does not develop a distaste for the ways of material existence. It's like, I shared this little story, but I won't do it again because I shared it before. Why is it sufficient? There are lots of people that are suffering. Not just old age and disease suffering, but suffering, mind, and you know, there's too much conflict within oneself and outside oneself and all around. Too much. So supposing one tries and tries and tries to counteract it or make it nice instead of suffering, and the little light comes on that says, you know what? I made a wrong choice. I want to do a U-turn. I want to go back. And so question, why is it not sufficiently simple just to do a U-turn, go back? You know, supposing you make a wrong turn on your GPS. The GPS will self-correct you. They'll tell you how to get to your destination. So suppose you know your destination, but you made a wrong choice sometime back there. And here you are in a stuck situation. So just do a U-turn. It's reasonable. But why don't people, that's what's on the screen here, is people don't do that. Why? The answer is very simple. They're not attached to suffering, but they're attached to the sources of suffering. And that's what Prahlada is warning. The source. You know, necessities, fantastic. And excesses, not fantastic. And attached to the excesses, abundant. Especially for those that don't have a sense of what's the purpose of life. So then, not understanding the purpose of life, they keep going material existence, lifetime after lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, endlessly, according to Bhagavad Gita. There's no end to it. The cycle of birth and death can go on endlessly. Question, isn't it? It's negative. Isn't it that eventually we're all going to, you know, go back home, back to Godhead, like get, you know, the light goes on, we don't want to be here anymore, we just go back to Godhead, isn't it? No. According to Bhagavad Gita, endlessly. That's a long time, endlessly. Lifetime after lifetime after. So then what to do? Then hear from the right source and then cultivate. That's what Prahlada is indicating. We're not attached to the source. We're not attached to the misery, but we're attached to the source of misery. So it's like a ball and chain. And this is how the section ends. Bereft of knowledge. Nice picture, huh? They are bewildered and overcome by ignorance. Bereft of knowledge of the Lord, they're bewildered and are overcome by ignorance. Like that young fellow that got the Bhagavatam set yesterday in Bellingham, the state of Washington. He's not a Hare Krishna guy, but he's understanding the importance of where we have strength and capacity, sensual capacity, do the needful to reach the goal of life. His light's on. He knows what the goal of life is and how well he's doing towards that goal of life, probably better than most people, because he knows what the goal of life is, and he's working towards that with his whatever capacity he has. And with good guidance, it makes the capacity strengthened. Let's see what happens after he reads the Bhagavatam. He sounds like, a good candidate for reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, I suppose we could end, but I wanted to cover a few more verses, 16, 17, 18. And here's the verse. And then we're going to end and invite discussion. 16. Oh, my friends, sons of demons, in this material world, even those who are apparently advanced in education have the propensity to consider, quote, this is mine, and that is for others, I and mine. Thus, they are always engaged in providing the necessities of life to their families in a limited conception of family life, just like uneducated cats and dogs. They are unable to take spiritual knowledge. Instead, they're bewildered and overcome by ignorance, just like that fellow in the picture. My dear friends, O sons of the demons, this is the conclusion of this section. It is certain that no one bereft of knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been able to liberate himself from material bondage at any time or in any country. Rather, those bereft of knowledge of the Lord are bound by material laws. They are factually addicted to sense gratification. They're not attached to the misery, but they're attached to the source of misery. Senses, sense objects, go for it. Get more opportunities to get those sense objects. And money helps, so you get more money, so you can get more objects, so you can get more enjoyment. And chasing. Addicted to sense gratification, and their target is woman. Indeed, they are actually playthings in the hands of attractive women. Victimized by such conception of life, they become surrounded by children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Thus, they are shackled to material bondage. Those who are very much addicted to this conception of life are called demons. Now, addiction. I'm going to end with this. Just a little sharing, because one of the things I do is I visit universities, and I shared yesterday, one of the main topics they want to hear about is overcoming anxiety, stress, negative emotions of different kinds. It's like they want to hear about that because they deal with it. They have friends that deal with it, and they want some guidance. So one of the little messages I like, there's a UCLA girl, UCLA graduate, telling her story about obsession for information, and it describes it's addictive. It's a detail. It's called dopamine. Some of you know a little bit about dopamine. It's a type of something that the body releases that produces an addiction for something. So information like Google, people are addicted to their computer. The computer itself is not a problem. It's the addiction tendency that's a problem. And she went on and on and on. It's such that you can find anything about anything. Just you Google guru, and you enter, and in a moment she gave examples and showed examples on the screen on her little, sort of like kind of like a TED talk. And so the indication is very similar. So regulation. Nothing wrong with the computer, nothing wrong with getting information. But when there's an addiction, that's what Prahlada is speaking about to his friends, to his classmates. Too much. And one becomes addicted. So the addiction, so engage without attachment. What's that? Not, without attachment, we discussed this. Without attachment doesn't mean you become cold, impersonal, neutral, no feelings, no attachment, like a stone. Not like that. That's not what, according to Bhagavad Gita, detachment means attachment to the Supreme. And when one is attached to the Supreme, then you do as is pleasing to the Supreme. And that's it. Pleasing to the Supreme. That's it. And then, so there's affection galore, but it's properly directed, attachment to the Supreme. And then the natural affinity for the last 5 chapters of this 7th canto, the system of Varna and Ashrama. It's fine. And then within that context, then gradually bhakti can increase, moving away from the affinity to attachment to the Supreme. That's the system. I'm going to end. Therefore, although you are sons of demons, keep aloof from such persons and take shelter of the Supreme Personality Godhead, Narayana, the origin of all the demigods, because the ultimate goal for the devotees is Narayana, is liberation from the bondage of material existence. So here's a few more words and we're done. Addicted to sense gratification, unable to liberate himself, keep closest, deal with those persons that have that propensity as far as needed, because we live in the world and we deal with people that are like that in a respectful, polite, courteous manner. But the close affinity should be with those that are on the path of transcendence, whatever stage they're in, and ideally those who are very advanced in the path of transcendence. Achieve liberation from bondage of material existence. Okay. The end. So you're very patient. No one walked out. What do you think? Yesterday we heard about, I shared with the devotees, there was somebody sitting right in the front. Like you're kind of sitting right in the front, so I'm picking on you a little bit. That's okay. And the question was asked by this young boy, glasses, maybe younger than you, but same age or a little younger than you. What are the 3 most important messages you heard from today's class? And immediately he presented the 3. So I'm not going to embarrass you like that. But, with your father or somebody, you can share. Because the purpose of hearing is something goes in, And then there's something that goes in, it stirs. And there's something that stirs, then it gives direction to your life. But the potential is there. The potency is there, if you've heard nicely. So I encourage you, and I encourage your father, but you can even do it just from your own. Dad, I want to share with you the three topics that I heard that it was most meaningful to me. Is that fair? I caught you with a hand in the cookie jar. Do your best. You can try later. Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj. I'm just kind of processing that these verses can be maybe misunderstood. I don't know if that's the right word. Misunderstood. I just think two different ways that come to mind. One is maybe seeing them, taking them in a way that, like I read this and then I think, oh, I shouldn't be attached to my family in any way at all, and maybe encouraging like a false renunciation type of mood. And then the other, maybe kind of the other, swinging the pendulum the other way, is that, well, now I'm a devotee, my kids are devotees, so this doesn't apply to us. It doesn't apply to me. So I wonder if that makes sense to you, and if you would elaborate on that.
Well, I tried to do the first one already. I don't know how successful I was, but I tried. Having a material body means there's necessities. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to the bodily necessities, and having family is a bodily necessity for some, and so they're to be engaged accordingly. As I gave the example, I don't need to repeat all of what I said before. One can become perfect. I'll say it twice. One can become perfect as a householder. And that perfect householder is one who's not callous and swing the other way, like just trash the family and good luck to all you guys. I'm checked out. I'll stay here, but I'm checked out. So that's not the message. It's not the stage of perfection. It's the wrong. You better change the channel. You got your receivers on, but you got the wrong message. And then go the other direction. It's an interesting other direction, the other pendulum direction. I'm already a devotee, so it doesn't apply to me. So there's caution because we're in the material world. And the material world is a slippery slope. It's a danger. In the words of Prahlada, padam, yadvi padam, datesham. There's danger at every step. So you mind your P's and Q's. You be careful. And as you're being careful, it's not like fear, but you're just being, your light's on. You're moving carefully because there's danger. It's at any moment of inattention. That which is very useful, this human form of life, can make a bloody mess. Using Prabhupada's example, the razor that's sharp can shave, but if you're inattentive when shaving, you draw blood. So be careful, be attentive, and it's the same as the Bhagavad Gita message that I mentioned. That is detachment. What Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita is, the real meaning of detachment is attachment to the Supreme. To the degree that I'm attached to the Supreme, there's the right kind, the right quality of detachment. So how am I doing as a married person, husband, wife, and kids in the family? How am I doing with being attached to the Supreme? And that's the measure of detachment. The measure of detachment is not, I don't care. It's not the callousness. It's the affection. So family affection is quite human and quite natural and quite normal and healthy, desired. It'd be a mess if it wasn't. There's lots of problems when there isn't affection in the family. Lots of problems. So with affection, that's rightly directed. So it does apply. Yes, Sri Vrindavan. I like your question, by the way. Thank you.
Guru Maharaj, just what Bandarika, she said, I was just reminded of an example, I think, gave in one of her classes recently, about being in the world but not unduly attached. And the example was that we all need, you need salt in your food, but you don't want to put too much, you don't want to put too little. So there should be just the right amount, so not unduly attached. So we need the salt, not too much and not too little.
Nice example.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, too much. An example that Prabhupada gives is salt. No salt, tasteless. Too much salt, problematic. Little. So one's presence should be little, as is appropriate. Now, one person and another person are going to differ. One family and other family, they're going to differ because we're different. But as not too much, not too little. So where's that line? It sounds too subjective. Is there some more objective? So it's tasteful, but not too much. And if you do too much, then you can get illness. Then you can go to a doctor. The doctor will make, prescription. Not so much, please.
My mother actually ended up in the hospital because she had too little sodium, too little salt. And she had to stay in the hospital for a few days to keep it up.
Okay. Okay. Good to have a good doctor and a good diet, a good balance in your diet.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just trying to understand, even after practicing this long, just what is wrong with sense gratification, not the harmful one, but the innocent sense gratifications like going on vacations and stuff like that. So how does devotee can do that and have Krishna consciousness at the same time?
Well, ideal and real are maybe different. Ideal is Krishna's at the center. So, for example, aside from going to holy dhams in India, one can go into nature and and try to see the wonders of the personality of God that created all this variegatedness and color and beauty, and look at this, who's the artist that made this, etc. So this is certainly possible. Certainly possible.
Yeah, I see that whole spectrum of devotees where one side is like doing a little sense gratification is like, taboo, bad, very bad. And the other side is where they are doing everything.
Well, we're all individuals. Some may need a little more salt. And the next person once you put the salt in, you can't take the salt out. So what this is the same question. Where's sufficient? Where is it more than sufficient? So one answer is where there's on the one, it's similar to her question, the two extremes, but something that I can sustain. It's a good consideration. And at the same time, I'm looking to diminish the salt. I'm looking to diminish simply this to the exclusion of mindfulness of Krishna.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's subjective from person to person.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Actually, my father also was in the hospital because of low sodium.
Really?
Yeah, unfortunately. But he's out now.
Recent?
Yeah, just a few days ago.
Really? A little more salt. Or something.
My question is, I don't know, maybe it's a weird question, but I was thinking about the Prahlada Maharaj's previous pastime of like fasting all night. And I was thinking this is like causeless mercy of the Lord.
Yeah.
That he got the position of Prahlada Maharaj being one of the Mahajans, being a Brahmana, not following anything, doing all those things.
Well, it's the mercy of the Lord, but also it's the potency of something that's triple super auspicious, even unknowingly. Meeting a devotee or having Harinam pass by somebody that's off on a party or whatever they're doing.
So one theory, maybe, I don't know if this is right, but if this is eternal, because we know Lord Nrsimhadev is eternal.
Yeah.
And is it that every millennium Prahlada Maharaj is changing, or is
I don't
there
know.
a causeless mercy that
It
one person
makes
gets that
sense,
position?
but I don't know. I don't have the scriptural authority to say yes or no. Maybe. Makes sense.
It's like
but I don't
someone
know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
Probably. A little
I
stronger.
mean, it's a position, or is it a person?
Already, because we already had, yesterday we had 3 from Vaikuntha, without listing the 3. So makes sense.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just reflecting on this section of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I was reflecting upon the world. Almost 99% of the people in this world will be householders or householders. So although Prahlad is speaking just to his classmates, but as you were mentioning, these are instructions for eternally and for all householders to come. Just thinking about that. And even for the overall stability of the world, the Grihastha ashram, it's quite important that it is stable. The Grihastha ashram is stable. Like in our Grihastha Vision team, their motto is healthy marriages, happy families, strong ISKCON. So as this Mataji was sharing, it seems that it is important that we sort of get it right, the householder, the Grihastha ashram, not leaning too hard this way or that way. So these are just some thoughts. And then finally the question is, as householders, it seems naturally one is attached, they are attached. So how does one move from an attached position to a detached position?
I answered it twice.
Yeah.
I'll say it again the third time. What is said to be renunciation is the same as attachment to the Supreme. So a householder or anybody become attached to the Supreme. And that means detachment from the excessive indulgence in the temporary of different varieties, not just family, but varieties of affinity for the temporary by attachment to the eternal. It's very simple. But in principle, it's simple. The application of the principle is also pretty simple.
Yeah, could you share further? Like, how does one get
We're doing
attached
it right now.
to
That's
Krishna?
one of the, that's sharing it further.
Through the sadhus, yeah. So like,
Well, we're discussing Lord Nrsingadev. Lord Nrsingadev says to Prahlad in the 11th chapter, Prahlad, you don't want to take this kingdom. I instruct you. You take the kingdom. Like, wait a minute, I don't want it. I told you I didn't want it. So he didn't whine and complain. I don't want it. But he gave, and he even said, and enjoy the opulences that your father left behind him. But don't worry, you'll be protected from the enjoying mentality by doing what we're doing. By remembering my glories and singing my glories and engaging in service to me, you'll be completely protected. No, but that's the positive. That's the attachment to the Supreme, detachment from the opulence. The excesses that come with opulence. Etc. Other nice examples and other nice examples. Maharaj Ambarish was fabulously wealthy. Yudhishthira Maharaj was fabulous. His opulence rivaled the king of heaven, Indra. Fabulously wealthy. Sudama Brahman, fabulously wealthy, but he didn't indulge. He accepted because that's what Krishna wanted for him, so he accepted. But he didn't become, bewildered. Now I'm enjoying, or I want to enjoy more, or something. So you're protected. Bhakti protects one from that.
so association of devotees.
What?
So association of devotees through sadhu sangha and learning the ways of life, essentially. Yeah.
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Yes. You get the last question, by the way. Okay.
The first is a comment, perhaps, and seeking your feedback. Is that it seems like as long as, Krishna and the teachings and as long as they remain at a level of some concept, conceptual, intellectual, it seems that it's very difficult to kind of keep that balance, or it remains on the surface of, I should do this, I should not do that.
Yes.
And then there's guilt when I do something that I'm not supposed to do. But then when it moves from conceptual to more heartfelt, and, there's higher taste, then it's really not like a restraint at all. And so I kind of tend to feel that it's so urgent sometimes that for devotees to really develop this higher taste. When we are pulled by that higher taste, things are not a struggle so much as I should do this, I should not do that. Would you like to comment on that further?
Yeah.
And then I have another.
We all have to begin somewhere. And some persons are more from the head and some persons are more from the heart. And the persons that are more from the head don't need to feel like they're in the penalty box. or they're being left out or something. So according to propensity, that even there's a conceptual sense that's beneficial. And then there's unsteadiness, the anishtita bhakti description of Madhurya Kandambani, the unsteady is there's things that are pulling me away from, using the language that you just presented, the heart. So what does the heart, from the heart mean? Then we had this discussion. Krishna should be pleased. And that's love. That Krishna, that the object of love is what's being carried in the vessel, the heart. Love. And then it's feelingly, then it's from the heart. Then it's no longer just the do's and the don'ts and the mechanical. But yeah, everything has to begin somewhere. Supposing I don't have love for Krishna yet. Or it's there to some degree, or love for some devotee or devotees. But so you have to begin somewhere. So yet your point is it's important. Yes, it's important. At the same time, my response to the comment is fan the spark, because if you make an undue emphasis, my experience is devotees start to feel sad. I'm not there yet. I'm not good enough. This self put down, when, and it's not like with devotion. I'm thinking, looking for that opportunity. It's just like, I've been at this for 5 weeks, and I'm not there yet. Or 5 years, or 15 years, or whatever the magic number is. Then start to feel bad. So that emotion can block their heart. So fan the spark. Encourage them to do what they can do. And then consider what's the step in the direction that you want to move in. So the direction is that Krishna should be pleased. That's the heart of bhakti. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilam. So it's doing the do's and avoiding the don'ts. We had this discussion already. The capacity to see what's to be done, what's not to be done. That's intelligence. Supposing I have intelligence, and I'm directing my mind, my dear mind, please go the way that's towards the light and away from darkness. And the mind's rebellious. And sometimes not. And then I beat myself up because I did the do not instead of the do. And that goes on. I mean, I'm sure you are well aware. So it's importance, but then how to get to that importance at the heart level? It's bhakti. And then how does bhakti? By sadhana. So then we go back to the do's and the don'ts. But what's the purpose of the sadhana? The why. That's the phrase that I've been using lately. Mm-hmm. Why? Okay.
And you also said that, one may be not attached to the suffering, but one could be attached to the sources of suffering.
That should be, but we are.
Yeah. No, I said could be. One
could be. Okay.
One could be attached. I was wondering if you could unpack that a little more. I mean, of course, there's the verse, Yehi samsparsha jabhoga, and if you could unpack it a little bit more.
Well, the verses at the very beginning we touched on. It's just amplifying the theme of the Bhagavatam. The more you go towards tamasi ma jyotir gama, the more you go towards the light, jyotir, the more the darkness is dispelled. Darkness is dispelled by going to the light. The more the principle, the affective feeling principle is towards Krishna. in devotion. And then all the do's and the don'ts, the accepting favorable, the power to discriminate what's favorable, what's not. It's in all those nice things. To the degree that there's some affinity for the personality of Godhead, whatever the level of sophistication is, or comprehensive, scriptural understanding foundation is or is not. Like the example that Pran Govind gave of the little Vrijbasi lady that every day she went to the Jamuna and fetched a bucket of water and brought the bucket of water for the service to the deity. And she's not a philosopher. She hasn't Bhagavad Gita slokas or Bhagavatam slokas. She's just a simple lady. And she's entitled to go back to Godhead because that's her focus. So we have different psychophysical makeups. The principle of developing some affinity, and the medium is devotional service. And then the emphasis on the devotional, not just the service. But even if there's just service, and Krishna is the object of service somehow, then the original affinity of the soul potentially can awaken with proper guidance and good association. Knowledge is necessary, but knowledge can awaken from within. I don't know if I exactly responded to your question, but we'll end with...
Thank you, Maharaj. The other day when you were giving one of the classes, you did a little grammar piece. The subject, the object, and the predicate.
Yeah.
If I'm recalling correctly.
There's a verb too.
Verb. Mm-hmm. You mentioned we're the subject, Krishna is the object.
Yes.
I was just thinking in my mind of the verse from the first canto, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So would that be our predicate and our verb?
Yeah.
The daily or regularly engaging in these activities that are related
Well, an
to
adverb,
Krishna.
regularly.
Yes.
That's adverb.
So, I think I'm a little bit older than many of the families here. My wife and I, there's maybe one or two people older than myself as well. But sometimes when you're in the moment of your household or life, it just seems like everything's happening now and it's not going to end. It's kind of like, this is it. But Prabhupada, in so many places, I get reassured where in so many places, especially in purports in Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about gradual advancement, gradual process. And to me, that gives me some sense of like, okay, I'm maybe not there yet, but I know it's a gradual process, not to be complacent. But I was just wondering if you could maybe share a few things on how do we, maybe I'm not thinking always of Krishna, but what are those things that I can do to increase?
These how-to questions have a standard answer. You've been around me long enough to know what that standard answer is.
I do.
Here's the flashcard. Sadhu Sangha. Next question. And to find sadhus, there's a whole community of sadhus. Those who are devotees of Krishna are sadhus. And in Sadhu Sangha, Ragamika asked the same question. So, Mahat Sevam, serve. Not just hang out with, but in addition, you see what you can do to serve them in, some simple way, but, from your heart. This from the heart kind of message. So that if they're pleased, Krishna is pleased. And when Krishna is pleased, then everything is fine. Just keep cultivating like that. That's bhakti. And again and again and again, and for one's lifetime. It's the same thing that I said yesterday about Brahmatirtha. from the very first I met him, and till yesterday, and probably today too. His mood is service, and he's very mature in his service mood, and he can do this, and he can do that, and this, and that, and the other thing, and 16 things, and juggle balls, and he's a magician, but it's service from inside, and it comes out. And so Krishna has given him intelligence and abilities and skills, and he's decorated so wonderfully. Just, I was appreciating that as we were sitting together, how he's entered, how he was serving everybody in different ways. It's just natural for him. So, associate with Brahmatirtha, associate with persons that have that service mood, and that mature in their service mood, and serve them. My mind is going to some of the examples that he was sharing with people that weren't in the room, but just in the mood, his mood of service. And it just like that's so associate with such persons. And and the pleasure of Krishna, the pleasure of, in his case, because he was very dear to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was dear to him. So he's that kind of person. Associate with such kinds of persons. Masevam Dor Mahor Vimuktes. Rishabdev. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.